Jason is a professor of environmental studies at Ithaca College. Cornell is on East Hill in Ithaca, and Ithaca College is on South Hill. So Jason's research program is broadly based in sustainability science. He is interested in all of the ways in which humans and local and global environments act as one in a complex social ecological system. Jason does quite a bit of teaching, and his passion in teaching is to provide students with both opportunities for experiential, integrative, transformative education. And a frequent partner of Jason in his teaching is Tim Drake, who we will also be hearing from. Tim Drake is a meditation instructor and a naturalist and growth coach. Tim works in the field of mindfulness and nature connections, and through both his co-instruction of courses with Jason at Ithaca College and through his founding of the Ithaca-based Primitive Pursuits, Tim has over 20 years of mentoring and coaching experience with groups, individuals, and organizations. So I am now going to turn things over to Jason and Tim.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, everybody. So today, Tim and I are going to talk to you about a course that we've developed kind of in conjunction with Ithaca College's Nature RX program. And you'll see kind of why I'm saying that it's in conjunction with rather than for. But the idea here is to try to figure out ways to combine some of the things that, again, like other people have said, combine things that were going on already to leverage their impact. So we come from the Department of Environmental Studies and Sciences, which is a little bit different from many of the other speakers here. Many of the other speakers are coming at this from arboretums or therapy perspectives. You know, we come at this from the environmental studies perspective. We've been exploring for about 20 years in the Environmental Studies and Sciences Department how to increase nature connection. And so one of my particular interests is when we do things with students, how can we make them so connected to the natural world that they basically fall in love with it and want to save it. And so we've developed a number of classes, of experiential classes that are based on kind of the Bloom's model of cognitive, affective, kinesthetic learning. And so one of our signature classes in the department is a course called Environmental Sentinels, which is a nature awareness and experiential class that meets once a week for 4 hours in the woods. This is the lower right picture. One of the things we teach in that class, for example, is how to make fires by rubbing sticks together. What can you eat when you're wandering around outside? And we teach formal kind of storytelling techniques. And so here's the final exam where each student is presenting a creative nonfiction story based on the storytelling techniques that we've taught over the semester. The middle bottom picture, we've developed a student-run business called South Hill Forest Products. This is a group of students who are cracking open black walnuts that they've collected, and we make dye and dye shirts. And in this particular case, we're also pressing them for black walnut oil. The left picture is our maple syrup operation. We've decided to go low tech so that we can use this as actually part of outreach and show people in the community that yes, they too can do maple syrup without a large investment. And so this is the students fanning up the fires to get the students to boil. We have a class in beekeeping where we have one of the only apiaries at an institution that's completely devoted to undergraduate education. And we teach courses in animal tracking and herbalism and things like that. So a lot of this has, as I think you can tell, has been focused on environmental studies and sciences students. These are all courses within the department. Some of the courses, yes, are taken by students from outside of the department by word of mouth. But Tim and I started wondering, how can we reach more people with even greater impact than with our kind of approach of experiential learning in the wilderness. So we wanted to develop a class that was specifically for Ithaca College Gen Ed program, as opposed to specifically for environmental studies and science majors. But we wanted to keep this focus on powerful learning experiences. That's a term that was coined by a colleague of mine and is in the published literature now. But many of the experiences in these kind of highly experiential classes stick with students for decades. And well, okay, I can't say that because we've only been running it for 10 years. So how about a decade? Because we still get comments back from students. I remember that day we did such and such. So we wanted to see, how can we build this into a program that wasn't just within the majors. So as we started thinking about developing powerful learning experiences for more general audiences, and again, many of you are like, well, duh, this is just all reinventing the wheel. Well, yeah, sorry, we were reinventing the wheel because we'd never heard of Nature RX a year and a half ago. But we started thinking about that many of our programs were taking people into the woods. Even within environmental studies and sciences students, they were forgetting that nature is kind of where you are. So yes, a bench on the side of a street with a tree over it could be nature. Sitting on your balcony could be nature. Looking out your window could be nature. And so how can we expand people's feeling of what is nature to improve kind of the nature experience. We started thinking about the activities themselves. And again, we have this kind of philosophy of trying to build activities that involve cognitive, affective, and kinesthetic components all into the same activity. So many, college classes might be very thinking oriented, or in the humanities, they might be more affective, thinking about the impact on your emotions or ethics. It's not that often that you get kinesthetic components built into kind of traditional, kind of lecture discussion, college-based courses. But how can we build all these three into all the activities themselves in an integrated way? And then thirdly, we wanted to think about the mental state of the participant. What we've noticed over time, and I'm sure many of you have too, that if you take somebody outside, the background of that student determines whether or not they're going to have a positive or a negative experience sometimes. What's a positive experience in nature to one student is a pretty miserable experience outside to another student. And so we started thinking about, well, the degree of connection to that place was going to affect how they perceived the particular activity that we were doing. What was their general nature awareness, and what was their level of knowledge about just natural history goodies would affect their experience of the place. And basically, what level of kind of mood disturbance or stress were they under? What we were noticing is that sometimes the students were so stressed out that when we took them outside, they weren't outside, they were still inside. They were inside their own heads at that point. And while I'm sure there was benefit of being outside, it was very minimal because there was such thick walls around them already. So how could we design experiences to break them through some of these walls? As we were designing that course, we actually met Don and realized that there was this thing, the Nature RX campus network forming. And so simultaneously, a colleague of mine, Matt Vossler, in the Outdoor Adventure Leadership Program, and I started a Nature RX program at Ithaca College. And again, very similarly to what we heard from the folks at Minnesota, trying to figure out, we have all these things going on. I've only just been talking about what was going on in environmental studies and sciences, but how do we bring them together? And as we talked about after one of the breakout rooms, and then how do you brand it in such a way that people think about it as Nature RX, as for health, as a way to improve mental health. So what we had to think about very deeply was what makes a program a Nature RX program as opposed to an outdoor adventure program or just an environmental studies program. And it was this kind of this branding where, well, it depends on your intention. And so the intention here needed to have some sort of focus on particularly mental health and a focus on inclusion of all of ethnicities, abilities, and age groups. And that language on this slide is actually copied off the CNRX website. So you guys might have seen that before. So the grand opening of our program, the first meeting of our committee, was on December 2019. And so we envisioned a steering committee, which would become the organizing body of this program. And so we had faculty from Environmental Studies and Sciences, the Recreation and Leisure Studies Department, Outdoor Adventure Leadership is a program within that department, the Psychology Department. We had people from Residential Life represented on the committee. The head of our counseling center was there. People from our Center for Religious and Spiritual Life, the director of the health center, and we have a nature reserve system next to campus. So the director of our natural lands program, who's also a faculty member, was all at the table. And we started discussing how we were going to, again, create a cohesive program as opposed to just things going on around campus. So the grand opening of our program was December 2019, and the grand pausing of our program was 4 months later on March 2020, because, there you have it, New York went on pause. So that kind of creamed us right there. We met twice. And you say, well, then why am I even giving this talk? Well, because we had already been developing this course, which and is continuing going on, which again is a curricular example of a specifically designed curriculum for credit with that supports and is supported by a Nature RX program. So again, we're thinking about these three strands in developing powerful learning experiences. How do we get people out to a place that they're going to find basically not scary at the very least, or maybe even pleasant at best? How can we specifically design activities that will meld together the cognitive, affective, and kinesthetic parts of the person's personality? And how can we take into account the fact that many of these students have such thick mental barriers that they're not getting the nature experience that they could get? So for place, again, our inspiration was drawn from many of you in the Nature RX movement, things like apps and websites and posters, and again, just a rethinking of what is nature. Nature doesn't have to be deep in the woods, and in many cases, it's better if it's not, because deep in the woods takes too long to get to for the amount of time that somebody has. In terms of activities, we've had 20 years of experience with the nature connection movement, specifically a pedagogical model called the 8 Shields model, which was developed by John Young and the Wilderness Awareness School in Duvall, Washington. And so that language and that pedagogy informs our natural history education, again, how do we teach students how to light fires by rubbing sticks together? How do you do that on a college campus and a college class, and make it be safe and make it be fun? And how do you eat things, and just all that sort of stuff. And we were thinking then about what about the person aspect? And in fact, it was Tim who pointed out that together we had several decades of experience in contemplative pedagogy and meditation instruction. We had always just been very, very carefully dancing around the edges of that because, you know, that's all hippie woo-woo stuff, right? But we decided that, well, let's just stop being embarrassed about that and bring that in as a central focus of the entire class. So we brought in these three strands: the pedagogy of the Eight Shields model from the Nature Connection movement, 2 decades of experience in meditation instruction, and the access and equity components from the Nature RX movement. And we developed this new class called Mindful by Nature. And the basic structure of this class was that we would focus on formally teaching mindfulness and meditation. And that mindfulness meditation instruction, whether it was inside or outside, would be specifically designed to improve nature connection. And by that improved nature connection, that would improve the mental health and decrease the mood disturbance of the students, which would then feed back and help further their mindfulness even deeper, which would build their nature connection, and around and around and around. And so we've now delivered that successfully one full semester, kind of before COVID shut us down. And Tim's going to talk about just a couple of the activities that we've put into this, that there's time for in a talk like this, and then kind of what's going on today.
Thank you, Jason. Just something you said there reminded me of a student's question. We have them oftentimes after readings or reflections come up with questions so we can have discussions. And one of the students said, who was it or when did it first start that meditation became this new agey woo-woo stuff? And it just kind of made me laugh a lot because, of course, mindfulness has been around for 2,500 years. And, you know, though we talk about nature connection kind of as sometimes as a modern movement, it's good to remember that all of us, you know, sitting here today, all of our ancestors someplace in the world, wherever our origins are from, were masterful at nature connection. It was kind of critical for survival to have that connection, both for health and well-being, mental, physical, but to provide the very, you know, food and resources and tools and close relationships to the land. So when we kind of stepped into this class of Mindful by Nature in the design of it, we were looking for ways that we could you know, approach that and approach this with an open kind of compassionate awareness. How do we build that so the students are having activities or opportunities to be able to connect with nature, connect outward with, you know, with direct sensory type experiences, and also to turn that lens of awareness inwards and to sort of look at the inner landscape and notice the inner weather, because those two can't really be separated, the filters at which we look at the world. So one of the core practices that we do is something really simple, and it's as powerful as it is simple, and it's called the sit spot. Having them pick a place, and it could be in the natural lands if they have access to that, parks in a city, but it can also be backyards, it can be balconies or stoops, but a place where one kind of can sit for some time and really just be able to notice changes, notice how changes happen over the course of a day, over the course of a semester, over the course of seasons. And to notice how that in the mindfulness ways impacts them and how their impacts on the world around them. So this sit spot, we send them out there with some very directed activities. It's sort of our training ground sandbox, if you will. We have them do maps of their neighborhood, of their natural lands, and maps meaning plant communities or waterways, topography, but also things like the movement of birds and bird language. Even though they might not know what they are, they can become aware of it. But of course, there's also this important aspect of it, which is just a chance for the timeless kind of feel of sitting in a space and de-stressing, you know, letting go for a moment of the burdens that have built up over the course of the day or a lifetime. Certainly we have enough of those right now that it's a really critical place and space, and the students reflect that back to us. And so kind of, you know, here just wanted to give some of you a little brief description if you're not familiar with something like this, because it is really simple and it could be incorporated into your own classes, programs, or just into your own daily routine if you'd like. And simplistically speaking, it's picking a spot. We like to have people shop around, we say, sit in a few different places, see what feels safe to you, what feels good. It doesn't have to be a full wild place. It can be, again, as we said, any number of urban areas as well. And really just a place you feel comfortable, but you need to be able to get there in short order. People like to pick their favorite iconic park that takes a half an hour to drive to and then 20-minute hike in. And those people, while they love that spot, they don't go to it very often. And so the need to get there often actually is more important. So we just say keep it under, a 10-minute walk or drive or something to be able to get to that spot. And then really the spirit and energetics of when you're getting there, regardless of whatever else happens, is just, unplug, turn off the phone, kind of begin to tune into the world around you, again, the environment. And again, it's this really powerful opportunity for people to sense that nature isn't just out there, where nature is as much in us as it is out there. And to feel that and not just hear that as kind of an idea, the sit spot really builds on that and speaks to that. So some words, though, maybe reflected back from the students themselves could help to kind of portray what happens after some time doing this. So over the course of a semester, we give them lots of opportunities to go to their sit spot and do meditations, do those directed activities. And here's a few things that have been kind of reflected back. There were many things that I took note of for the first time, but that I'm sure I had experienced before. I just hadn't slowed down enough to see that these observations were there to be had. Taking the time every day to change my pace and devote myself to a form of self-care really did a lot for me. I learned to let go of my stress and practice awareness. I find myself letting my anxiety for school and other life variables overwhelm me, and this exercise lowered that significantly. And I think just in these two quotes, it really just shows just the power of helping students to slow down. And that's been reflected in other talks today. But sometimes they just need an invitation or permission to do so. We get a lot of students that come back and at first they feel like they have to be writing term papers or taking big tests. And so the idea that we're telling them to go out in nature for a while starts to freak them out because they feel like they, probably should be at a computer doing something. So, in the immediate moment, they'll reflect back that there's an initial resistance almost. And yet once they get out there and they just sit, a good amount of time is 20 minutes. 20 minutes helps the landscape around them to settle down from their initial disturbance, we'll call it, their impact of getting there, but it also helps them to settle down internally. And they almost always come back with these really touching, powerful reflections. And here's a couple more for you. Taking this time today was what I needed to set me back on the trail towards happiness. I'm happy to know that I have a spot where I can release my tension. I was reminded that there's always a sanctuary in the woods. It's a place where I can be separate from the noise of my everyday life and can actually hear what my subconscious is trying to say to me. And one more, it was very lightly sprinkling out, which felt like a sympathetic comfort. I felt like the woods understood me. I've been feeling frustrated and sad recently. This might sound weird, but it felt like the trees were a little closer to me, like they were protecting me. I felt okay. Not magically cured or anything, but I came to an understanding with myself. And I guess these, messages there kind of helped me think about, again, just reinforcing that inner and outer awareness and connection. So that's the sit spot. There's a whole suite of activities after, 20 years of running programs for everybody from preschoolers, through college students to retire programs. There's a lot of stuff that works. A few other ones that we do is this blindfold type work, which is amazing sensory experience by putting blindfolds on students. Yes, there's a little moment of discomfort there, but it really quickly drops them into their other senses that are often subdued or dulled or shut down in a really powerful way. So there's a lot I could say on that more, but for time's sake, I'll just say that we are working on a book and there'll be some opportunities for you to see some of those in the future. But of course, formal meditation, as we've described, which isn't just sitting on a cushion or on a chair, which is part of it, but there's walking meditations, there's sound meditations, there's a whole suite of things. And again, different access points for everybody is really helpful. Nature study, of course, has to be in there. And that might mean things like Jason's already described, eating wild edibles that we've harvested out there in nature, but also just bringing food outside from, picnic style lunch, just to kind of incorporate, the merging of these worlds. A lot of times food is just relegated to things we get from the grocery store that comes in plastic containers, and people really miss out on where it's sourced. So nothing better than eating an apple under an apple tree. And then finally, kind of what's going on today. When we designed this course, it wasn't meant to be a nature connection type course run from behind a computer screen, but that's where it went. Ithaca College, for the most part, is online. And so we found ourselves adapting this course to be a Zoom offered program. And while I certainly love being outside with the students directly, it's turned out that we've been able to pull this off quite well. And that's because we sort of flipped around the classroom style. We give them activities and such that send them outside, so they still get outside a lot. We come back together and we do the reflections as we normally would. And even in class, we will send them out. This class meets twice a week. It's a 3-credit course, meets twice a week for an hour and 15 minutes each time. And in there, we'll send them out for a 15-minute exercise, bring them back in. So last couple things here, mentioned that we are working on a book that's targeted towards general public and probably titled Mindful by Nature, exploring kind of these teachings and the interplay between nature connection and mindfulness. And finally, some assessment that's happening from one of our colleagues, Matt Jarman, looking again at the impact of weaving these two intentionally together. And that's where we find ourselves today. And just leaving you here with a quote that I love, Shakespeare: "One touch of nature makes the whole world kin."